When the outdated tactics get left behind, it's time we stop. Marketers look around when your ranking's going down. It's the Jim and Ann Show. Do 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 do. In today's episode, we're going to talk about Google updates because, Ann, you asked me which question just now. You said,
have you checked the recent unconfirmed Google update? I think it was like Monday or something.
And my response was, man, if I had to check the recent unconfirmed update, I'd have to check every day because it seems like every day there's an unconfirmed recent update. You know, if you look at a lot of the places, there's an update, there's an update, there's an update. It seems like every day there's an update. Now, Google's doing changes all the time. I think they say they do hundreds, thousands of tweaks a year. And so, yeah, every time they do a little tweak, some sites are going to see an effect. And if one site falls, they're like, they'll go to Webmaster World. I'm like, this guy is falling, my site's falling, there must be a big update. And someone else will chime in, mine fell too. And then they're like, all right, it's an unconfirmed update. And there's different tools that you can check the weather and how volatile Google is during any period as well. And Barry Schwartz is really good on reporting unconfirmed updates as well. And so my response was no, I didn't look into the unconfirmed update because I'd have to do it every day. There's an unconfirmed update. But this leads to another question is, what happens if you're affected by an update? Or let's say we looked into that update and we're like, what are things we noticed with this update? And the answers are always going to be the same, I feel. It's not like the old days when Google would do an update once a month, or they would have an update called, Panda or Penguin, and or an above the fold update. Google used to have updates. They would give names and they would describe what it was, and it would all happen on one day. Today it's Panda number 23. And you'd be like, all right, if my site was affected on this day, means my content needs improving. Or if it was, a Penguin update, you'd be like, oh, I need, my links are bad or whatever. And if it was above the fold update, it's like, oh yeah, I got a bunch of ads above the fold, I better move some of those lower. It used to be a lot clearer. Today, boy, is it fuzzy, because a lot of times I think when Google does things, you often don't drop on one day. It's a slow thing over time. It reminds me on, I think it was on Twitter, maybe like 6 weeks ago, someone asked John Mueller, they were saying that their site was affected by the Core Web Vital update. And they're like, what is it we should do? My site was affected by the Core Web Vital update. And John says, oh, did it happen, the day of the announcement or right around the announcement? He's like, yeah. And he says, then you weren't affected by it. Because, the guy was talking about his rankings dropped like overnight. And John says, if you're affected by the update, it's kind of a slow, gradual thing that happens. And so a lot of the updates, like you may not know what Google's doing because you may just slowly start losing rankings over time, like over 6 months, and 6 months later, you're like, what happened? Because everything just slowly went down. And so it will kind of come back to that question of, what do you do if your site's been affected by an update? What if it was overnight? What if it's over time? If at some point you're like, I'm not ranking the way that I used to, it's near impossible these days to pinpoint it to one thing. You can't just go into a site and be like, you've been slowly losing rankings over the past year and it's your links or it's your content, or, it's hard to put a finger on anything today and say, that's what it is. Those days are over. And I think anyone that points to a thing and says, it was about this, they don't know what they're talking about. So what do you got to do? You got to look at everything. How is the content? How is the user experience? How are the backlinks? How's the web speed? How's the usability? How's the technical You know, are there ads on the site? There's like a million things that you could basically take all the past updates in the past that they gave names and talked about and like apply all that knowledge to what's going on today with a site that's gone down. And it's almost the same advice if you weren't affected. You know, if someone just calls us up and says, like, we want to hire you, you know, we're doing good, we want to do better. It's the same analysis. You got to look at everything, everything. You can't just point to one area or look at one area. It's, you know, what's the user experience? What is your content? Do you have too much content? Do you have too little content? Are you serving the user experience? How are your links? Are they real? Are they natural? Were they paid, bought, exact match anchor text? Are they coming from real sites? You know, there's just so many things that you would need to look at nowadays. So, you know, when Ann says, hey, did you check out the recent update? No, it's all the same. You know, I know the same things I would look at. It'd be hard to look at it and be like, oh, you know, I don't think I'd ever be able to go to Ann and be like, Ann, I solved the update. I know what happened. You know, they like no more than 2,000 words on a page, you know. But it's funny if you go into some of the places like Webmaster World or other, like everyone claims they know because they're analyzing one site. So let's say there is a big update, you know, and it's a confirmed one. And like a lot of times today, no one really knows, even if Google confirms it, what that update was. So a lot of times in Webmaster World, like someone would be like, my site was affected and my content's really long on my pages. It must be my content's too long, you know, and someone else would be like, my site was affected, but I don't think I had enough content. I need more. It's like, and someone else would be like, my links are bad. And people just throw stuff out there, analyzing their one site. And even when we have a lot of sites to look at, it's often not, you know, able to make a decision on what exactly it was. You know, even if there was some huge update and we got, you know, a couple clients affected by it and you look for the commonalities, like, you know, like those days are kind of over, you know, because everything that, you know, I used to do that in the past. You'd be like, oh, you know, these 3 clients were affected by this update. We must figure out why. And every time you'd be like, all right, these 3 sites at least have this in common. I could go through the rest of the clients and be like, well, so do these. And it's like, all right, maybe it's this. Nope, you know, and I think Google does that on purpose as well, so that like no one can really figure it out, you know. And there's so many little updates and things they're doing, and it could be multiple things being put out together.
And there's also another thing: if you've been affected by something, you could be back up in a week or so without doing anything. So it's not like don't rush to change everything if you think you've been affected by anything, because it's so not consistent right now. You could be losing traffic today. In a week, it could be twice as much traffic as you had before that update, so-called. So just slowly, surely improve your websites without like rushing into changing everything because you think you've been affected by anything.
Yeah. And almost the first thing you need to do if you see that your traffic from Google is dropping, one of the first things we usually do is then quick go check Bing, you know, and if your traffic at Google and Bing both dropped on the same day, you did something to your site. And that's a really important thing to check, because sometimes you'll be like, Google penalized us. And it's like, no, you followed your site or blocked your site or something. So always, you know, the first thing, whenever someone's like, I've been hit by an update, the first thing I do is, you know, run over to Bing and check your analytics there.
It's an interesting point. So Bing Webmaster tools are also useful, right?
Correct. And there's, you know, another, what we use internally is, you know, we have a couple tools internally that pull stuff from Google. And I know that part of what we can do is we can look at all the search engine traffic and just Google search engine traffic and can slice it and dice it. But yeah, it is good to have Bing Webmaster tools. They've got some really neat things, especially around covering backlinks that probably not a lot of people know about. Plus, their Webmaster tools are pretty neat, like how there's a lot of interesting things about it. But one of the things is like that they do that Google doesn't in Google Search Console is you can kind of see the directory of your site and the files in your site and how everything is played. They do some neat display stuff, plus some really good link analysis that not too many people know about. So yeah, if you're hit by an update, you got to look at everything. And I feel bad for new SEOs because they don't know that whole history. There's certainly an advantage to having, 20 odd years of experience knowing every little thing that Google might be affecting you for. Um, but yeah, you have to look at everything. It's really hard to be like, it's because of this. That often doesn't happen. It's going to be like, here are all the improvements that you could do to your site. Do all of those so that your overall score is better and you kind of rise up again. And it's not going to happen overnight either. But over time, sending new and better signals to Google should help to move you up. So often it's, if someone say was affected by an update and they come to us and they're like, hey, Jim, we're affected by an update. We need to know what is the problem and what to fix, and it's often like, all right, here's a whole bunch of things. And like, well, which one's the one that got us penalized? And it's like, I don't know. No one can really know, but overall, do all of these things here, which is going to make the site better. And, maybe it was number 7 on the list. Maybe it was number 43 on the list. Like maybe it's a mixture of 3, 6, and 22, but the answer is still look at everything and do everything you can to improve the site.
Marketers look around when your ranking's going down.